I'm in my backyard, I get a call. Hey, Kev, we're making this movie. Can be the camera and jet pilot for Gun Maverick. And I was like, well, it should work out.
Nice.
And I hung up the phone and I was just like, yeah. One day I killed the motor and I rolled into the front of the hangar, popped the canopy, and they were playing the theme song to Top Gun.
Oh, God.
And there was a moment there where I was like, oh my God, what are we doing?
Aviators, welcome to the Flight Club podcast. I'm your host, Jason Middleton. I'm a pilot, I'm an aviation entrepreneur, and I'm a huge fan of the people that make up our diverse aviation community. Today's guest on Flight Club has got to have one of the coolest jobs in aviation. He's a third-generation pilot, he's a filmmaker, he flies jets, he flies helicopters, he looks like a GQ model, and he happens to be the aerial coordinator for a little movie called Gun Maverick. Aviators, welcome Kevin LaRosa, call sign K2.
Thanks, Jason. That's quite an intro. Glad to be here.
Kevin, welcome to Flight Club, man.
Thanks.
I've been excited to connect with you and have you on the show for a long time. So it's good to finally connect.
It is. I know we're both busy guys, but we finally made those schedules merge. In fact, I feel like I'm flying. Like
we're here.
This is cool.
Like the helicopter, the news helicopter is going to fly by. You probably know the pilot.
Probably.
When they come by.
Call in some favors.
Well, just to jump in, you have one of the coolest jobs I've ever heard about in aviation. There's a lot of jobs in this business, but like, does that land on you? How do you feel about your job and what you do every day?
I constantly try to kind of step back from the busyness of it all and pinch myself, if you will, and go, look what we're doing. How cool is this? How unique is this opportunity to fly this helicopter here, fly this jet here? But what's really cool is we get to kind of showcase aviation and sometimes showcase all of cinema just from an aerial perspective to people around the world. And that's really fun for me. What's been the most fun, I'd say, for me is there's been a lot of people that have been inspired by it. And I never really thought that. I grew up in this business. I'm very fortunate. Grandfather was a pilot. Dad's a stunt coordinator, motion picture stunt pilot. And I never really thought people would grab a hold to it and go, man, that's cool. I want to do that. And the coolest thing ever is when like a young person, a little boy or little girl's like, how did you get into that? And what did you do? And that's been really fun, trying to see if I can maybe inspire the next gen, including my girls.
That's really cool. And do you know about the Top Gun effect? Have you heard of this?
No.
So when the first Top Gun came out, there was a huge spike in new pilots, and the same thing's happening right now. It's like all these kids, that movie brought so many people to aviation, and nobody really understands that. But if you look at the spike and people getting their privates and instruments and moving towards commercial aviation, there was a huge spike when the first movie came out, and the same thing's happening right now.
I think there was a big emphasis that it would be the single biggest Navy recruiting movie of all time. We know the first one was in 1986.
Yeah.
But I don't think I was tracking, or many people were tracking, it's just worldwide aviation.
Yeah.
The enthusiasm people would want to be aviators. That's really cool.
Yeah. So it's funny. I actually looked the stat up, and spikes, and so they coincide perfectly with the release of the movie.
Wow, that's cool.
So when when I mentioned you're the aerial coordinator for the movie Top Gun, what does that actually mean? I feel like it's a very encompassing position.
Yeah, I mean, there's the fun side to it, which is I get to go fly because I'm also a stunt pilot and camera pilot. But the aerial coordinator side, that's more of falling back on a team. I mean, you would know from your company, Silver Air. I mean, everything in aviation relies on a team. Everybody's got a job and a purpose. When a production company reaches out and they give us a storyboard or some kind of creative idea, they lean on us to help see if it's possible. Can we be compliant with FAA regulations or regulations for whatever authority, whatever country we're in? Can we do it safely, most importantly? Are we all going to go home at the end of the day? And can we actually make the director's dream come true? Which means we got to go source aircraft, or maybe I'm the wrong person to fly, or maybe somebody on my team doesn't have the experience we need. So I got to go find the right pilot that has experience in a particular asset or doing a maneuver. So an aerial coordinator is a position that I feel kind of is all encompassing to the job. It's the responsibility, it's building the team, leading the team, and executing the job safely, effectively, and within budget if you're being good to the customer.
Yeah.
That's the aerial coordinator side.
And you have to understand not only the aviation components, but also the cinematography components as well. Yeah.
You do. And there's a big misconception that I'm a cinematographer. People introduce me as that. if you put a camera in my hands right now, maybe I'd be able to turn it on and focus it. I don't know. My job is to put the camera in the right place at the right time.
Okay.
Like a dolly driver, right?
Yeah.
Or a camera car driver.
That's moving 350 knots.
Yeah, or something.
500 feet above the ground.
And it's, if I'm having fun, yeah. And it's 3-dimensional, right? So that's really fun. And the cinematographer, we call him an aerial director of photography. And that's what he is. He's directing the aerials through his lens. Yeah. And he's communicating with me on where I need to put my aircraft. It's the coolest thing in the world. It's like a team racing event, right? The coordination and our own language we have back and forth for how I need to move the jet or helicopter. Yeah. Super cool. But that's the fun part of the job. So it's like months of paperwork and planning and stress. And then by the time I get to crank the starter, now it's time to go have a little fun.
Oh, that's rad. Thank you. I mean, so we're going to talk all about this, but I in my research, I didn't realize this about you. I knew you come from a generation of pilots, and your dad sort of was a pioneer in aviation cinematography and production, but I didn't realize your dad was a pilot of AirWolf.
Yeah, he was. There was actually a few AirWolf pilots. All of them were super well known, amazing stunt pilots. My dad was one of them. And in fact, there's stories of me flying an AirWolf when I was a baby, taking it to air shows and stuff like that. I don't remember it. I always say I was born too late. Those are the golden days of aerial cinematography. But yeah, there's some pretty badass pictures of dad ripping around AirWolf.
I mean, like that was when I was a kid. I mean, I'm a little older than you, obviously. And, but when I was a kid, when AirWolf was on, that was the show for me. And I was just obsessed with AirWolf. I had the little, models of it, and I would play it out in the yard. And when I found out, I'm like, oh my God, that is the coolest thing to ever have on your resume.
Yeah.
I flew AirWolf.
Dude, I've gone places for like a speaking event, and people are like, cool, you're cool. I've kind of heard of you. And then someone will be like, his dad flew AirWolf. And everybody's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, dad flew AirWolf. It's a thing.
I guess it's my generation, right? We grew up on TV, and that was such a cool, such a cool show. But you grew up in this world of aviators. And I'm always fascinated by it. Like you and I have a mutual friend, Chris Conkle, which we were talking about a few minutes ago. And to come from this long line of aviation to me is just such a cool heritage to have. Can you talk to me a little bit about your family and growing up in an aviation family and what that meant to you?
Yeah, it's actually probably very similar to Chris. My grandfather flew in the service. He flew C-97s and P-51s for the New Jersey National Guard. So he had a love of aviation. He was also a civilian aviator too. And when my dad was born, growing up in that house, that's what he became keen to. He wanted to fly as well. So my dad became a civilian pilot and kind of moved up through the ranks. So aviation's kind of been in our blood for 3 generations. And I think the same thing that happened to my dad, same thing happened to me as a little kid, watching your dad go fly these incredible machines, watching people look up at your dad flying or something. You're just kind of in awe. And he's more of an icon, a hero, a legend. And as a kid, you're just like, man, I want to do that. That's awesome. And when we get that single track mind, probably very similar to Chris, like that's kind of all we think about. Like we eat, sleep, and breathe airplanes. I never wanted to do anything else. Like I literally wanted to be an aerial coordinator and stunt pilot. Wow. I didn't want to be an airline pilot. I didn't want to fly private jets. Interestingly enough, I did a lot of those things because those were necessary, as you know, being in the aviation business, necessary steps for me to build the experience and a bit of a name for myself. So by the time I got to this job, people would be like, oh yeah, he's not his dad's son. He actually he's done stuff.
Did you have to step out from your dad's world a little bit to like explore your own kind of boundaries and where you were?
Against my will. I was living the dream. I think I was 17 and going on movie sets with my dad and flying around. He was a warbird guy too. So we had a Mustang for a number of years, and I just died and gone to heaven as a teenager. And he knew I didn't want to do anything else. And it was, I remember the talkie. It was one day we were driving home. It was uncomfortable and I didn't want to hear it. But he said, if you ever want to do what I do, you're going to have to stop working with me and go be your own pilot, go be your own aviator. He literally said I was going to fail. It's probably difficult advice for a father to give a son, but it's the best advice I ever got. I would have failed. 100%.
That must have been really hard for him to have that conversation, because I'm a father too. And I've kind of had this same conversation with my son, who worked in my business. He's worked for Silver Air for a long time. Since he was 16, driving down to Van Nuys, working on the ramp, supporting maintenance and crew and all that. And I had to have him step out of the business. And it was really, really hard.
Very hard, I bet. I can't imagine doing it. And I'm a dad now.
Yeah.
And I may have to do that at one point with one of my girls if they take an interest, but
yeah.
I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have done that on my own, and I definitely would have failed. I know that now. And I did a lot of really cool jobs. I flew traffic watch Cessnas, and I flew right seat in King Airs, Part 135 ops, the old Spirit Aviation a little bit. And then I flew, Learjets for Part 135, and I upgraded to captain doing that. And I flew a camera Learjet for a company called Wolf Air, which was a little side gig that I had at a time.
You're sneaking it in.
Yeah, everything back? I can. Holidays, everything I can. And then flew.
Dad's like, I heard you're flying a film airplane. What are you doing?
Did little cargo like flying and just charter helicopter 135, a little utility. I kind of dabbled in a lot of things, but everything I did, Jason, I always knew I was going to be the best at every job I had. I wanted to be the top of my class, the best employee, the best pilot. Everything I did, I was like, I'm going to do everything 110%.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep graduating and moving up. And then one day, I think I was 27 years old, and I think I had roughly 5,000 hours split between rotorcraft and fixed wing.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any more vacation days. I didn't have any more sick time. I dabbled. I was keeping my foot in the door with movie work.
Yeah.
But I had to make a decision. And my decision was I was going to quit the full-time work and take a leap of faith to take on the career path that my dad did. And he said only I would know when I was ready. He never called me one day and was like, "You're good to go."
Really?
It was just one day I just was like, okay.
You just showed up like, here I am.
I'm there. And it was all the eggs in one basket, all fingers crossed, everything crossed, and it worked.
Wow. What was when you went on that kind of, journey in your own aviation path, what was the worst job you had?
Oh, the worst job building.
Nobody
up to
ever
it.
asked this question, but we all had them.
You know what's funny? And I don't talk. No one's ever asked me that question. I remember some of the hardest things, and I know Silver have probably done this a lot with the light jets and stuff. Organ running in the middle of the night, like boxes with organs in it.
Yeah.
You've been up all day and you get the call 11 p.m. or something. You're in a Lear. You don't have great avionics in an old Lear, and you're going cross country in bad weather. That stuff wasn't that fun.
Yeah.
But I knew the experience was very much so worth it. And even the helicopter side of that, I worked for a great company called Helinet Aviation out of Van Nuys, California.
I know they're a great company.
They are. And I flew Twin Stars in their medical program. Same thing like you would do in the jets. You pick up a transplant team. Of course, it's all in the middle of the night. It's 1 a.m. You've been up all day, or you have a family, and you're fighting fatigue, and you're flying in bad weather and VFR below clouds. And there was lots of times I was like, man, this is tough work.
Oh man, I do. That reminds me, when I first became a 135 pilot flying a Baron, and flying out of Bakersfield, we had a contract with the soft tissue bank, and there was an accident out in like middle of nowhere desert. Can't remember what it was, but we had to go that night. Me and a couple of medical techs in an ice chest flew out, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like, oh, we're going to an airport. There'll be an FBO. I'll hang out. We landed this field, nothing there. A van pulls up. And they're like, "You want to just go with us?" I'm like, "Sure," thinking I'm going to a hospital. Yeah. We actually ended up at a mortuary in the middle of the night, in the middle of the desert. And I'll never forget this. I'm sitting there in this kind of waiting area, but you see down this long hallway of, there's bodies on this, like the viewing rooms. But at the end, that's where they're prepping the bodies. And I see this door keep opening up and closing. And there's a body there, and there's medical techs running everywhere. And I'm sitting here in my pilot uniform. All of a sudden I hear this clop, clop, clop coming from my left side. And it's in the dark, and I look over, and it's this kid, this young kid, and he has a peg leg. Oh my goodness. I'm not even joking. So we're in the middle of the night. I'm sitting there going, and this kid is coming at me, and I'm frightened at this point. Like, well, what am I doing? Yeah. I'm a pilot. What the hell's going on?
How did I get here?
Is this aviation? I'm out. And, but the cool thing, this kid, he's like, "I heard you're a pilot." He just, in this soft voice, and he lost his leg in an accident when he was younger. And he sat there with me for an hour and just wanted to know everything about aviation.
Wow.
It ended up being a really cool experience, but
that took a twist.
Yeah, it was a really cool twist.
I before we get off the subject, I got to give a shout out to the men and women who fly HEMS, actual helicopter, like scene calls and stuff. Like I did, mine was poor man's. Like I was going to nice hospitals, helipads, but there's people that do this, men and women. They're all-nighters. It's dangerous work. So huge testament, shout out to you guys that fly that operation.
Yeah,
mad respect. And also huge respect to the transplant teams. They're like it's like a thankless job. Not many people know what you do unless you're a donor or recipient.
Yeah.
But I got to scrub in a couple times and watch that mission.
Oh, really?
And it is very serious. They're very good at what they're doing. Yeah. It's kind of sad. It's bittersweet. Someone's losing a life, but they're saving another life with that. I got to see it. So huge shout out to those transplant teams. That was a really cool part of my past of getting to watch them do their job. Far more important than what I do today. So thank you all for that.
I agree. And it just kind of, it just sort of highlights the fact there's so many things we can do in aviation.
Yeah.
And, flying private jets and filming, out of fighter jets is just a couple of those jobs. Right.
Yeah.
And, I think it's cool. You have that experience too. And you see all these things. And I think as a young aviator, it's really important to explore different things because some things land on you differently,
Best advice I ever got was, some of the best advice I ever got. Another piece from my dad. When I went to, I think it was Simu flight at the time in Dallas for my first 61. I was too young. I wasn't a pilot. I was co-pilot, 6155 training. Yeah. He told me before I kind of joined the fleet of 141. There we go.
Medi flight right there.
LA City Fire.
Yeah.
He said, you're going to fly with a lot of different people. And here's your job. Everybody you fly with, pay attention to what they do. You're going to see a lot of things you hate, a lot of procedures you don't agree with. And your job's to learn that and don't do it that way. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see a lot of things you like. Maybe it's a shortcut. Maybe it's a better way to do something. Maybe it makes more sense. Maybe it's smarter. Maybe it's safer. Your job is to learn that and add it into your own curriculum of how you fly.
Yeah.
After you've flown with a ton of people, especially 135 different captains, different co-pilots, we start designing our own way of flying.
Yeah.
And that's all done by listening, learning, watching, observing. Yeah. Sometimes it's, I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's awesome.
I totally think that's amazing advice. What do you think are like the kind of traits that you've followed a lot of people, the traits that make up kind of, solid aviators, the people across, you've done a lot of different things, the people you work with now, what are those traits that you feel you like, this is the kind of person I want to fly with?
I think anybody would agree with me. I mean, it's funny, aviation has a lot of just business and aviation go hand in hand, companies and how aviation's run. But I'll say this, I like working with people that are professional. They are just good people. They enjoy what they do and they enjoy doing a good job. They're professional.
Yeah.
Predictable. I don't like wild cards, especially with the business we do. We do weird stuff with jets, helicopters, and airplanes. You can't have someone just be like, I'm going there now. I'm going to do this. Like predictable, right? Yeah. That's going to save a life. I want to know what you're going to do before you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Start flying with somebody. You can actually learn like, he's pretty predictable.
Yeah.
Humble, right? So maybe you have the coolest job in the world, but you're just as susceptible to causing an accident or being an accident or screwing up. You're human.
Yeah.
Okay. So be humble. In an aggressive sense of humility. Mm-hmm. So be prepared to screw up and be able to raise your hand and go, okay, guys, I almost killed us today because I made this left turn here. I was early on my count or this, like I find, and that was very difficult for me. Like, it's egos come with the territory. So breaking through an ego, I still have an ego, being humble and respectful and also an aggressive sense of humility. Working with the United States Navy Blue Angels is where I kind of learned that humility, being able to sit there and break yourself down, let your team break you down so that you can get better. And the only way you're going to get better is if you realize where you suck.
Experience, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I am so glad you're bringing this ego and humility. I had a Sean Dugan, he's an aerial firefighter, worked all over the world. And his mantra is that the ego and the humility, the ego gets the job done.
Yeah.
And the humility keeps you safe.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really glad to hear you say that. Cause that's becoming like learning, doing the show. And I'm having the opportunity now to meet a lot of different people from all walks of life in aviation.
Yeah.
And that seems to be emerging. The top aviators out there, it's like, ego and humility. How do I balance these things?
It's not easy. Yeah. You notice I didn't mention skill. Skill's kind of part of the professionalism.
Yeah.
But you could be 90% skill and 10% have those other core values.
Yeah.
And I don't want to work with you.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like you got to be able to work with that other person, especially if it's a team atmosphere.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where, I mean, skill's important. Don't get me wrong. You got to know your aircraft, know your numbers, know your limitations, emergency procedures, be good at what you do. Yeah. But there's so many other factors that are equally, if not more important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. You have worked with some Blue Angel pilots. I know that. One of my employees is a former Blue Angel pilot as well. And these guys are sharp. And humility is like I was really surprised when I first met Dave, who works for me, the most humble, down-to-earth human ever.
Yeah.
You know, and I really appreciate that. And you think a Blue Angel pilot, these guys are not going to be that way, but they have to be that way, especially working in that environment.
They are so damn hard on each other. Let me tell you, like I was very fortunate that they trusted me to be in kind of that sanctity of those briefings and debriefings.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people get to be in there. Of course, the Blue Angel doc, you get to kind of see a little bit of that.
Oh, yeah.
But man, it's a rough crowd.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. That was such a phenomenal documentary.
It was well done.
Oh God, it was good. So good. Everyone should watch. It's on Netflix, right?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was released, which was cool, in IMAX theaters for a short time, so that you can go grab that full IMAX experience. And I think from time to time, they'll throw it back in those theaters.
Really?
It might still be available. I'm not sure, but yeah, check it out. It's for those that have seen the Blue Angels, you know, flying around air shows, that they've heard of them, that's really cool. But this really kind of gives you a little bit different perspective, what it might be like to really truly be a failing member or on the inside of the team.
Yeah.
And it's eye-opening.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, when you being an aerial coordinator, what is your, you know, maybe outside of the obvious Top Gun, the big one, right? What is your favorite stuff to do when you're going to work? Like, this is the fun. I love doing this. Like, what kind of things do you really enjoy?
Totally easy answer. I love flying.
Yeah. In front of the camera or behind? Because you've done both.
There's both. So we use two terms for that. A picture ship is something that we watch on camera. It's pictured. We can watch the picture and see the aircraft, helicopter, jet flying.
Yep.
So those are picture ships. The other version of that is a camera ship. So that you don't see. That usually has a camera attached to it. I'm the camera pilot. I'm moving the camera around. I get to do both. I'd hate not to do either one of them. What's funny is really good camera pilots makes excellent picture ship pilots. And really good picture ship pilots make excellent camera pilots.
Yeah.
So if you can do both, you kind of understand. You know, an actor, if you study filmmaking and stuff, they talk about an actor knowing where the lens is, right?
Yeah.
Where the lenses are and stuff. As a camera ship pilot, you're putting the lens in a place. But if you're the picture ship pilot, how you fly your aircraft in relation to where that lens is extremely important.
Yeah.
So you got to know where the lens is. You got to know where the light is. It's not just about cranking and banking. It's a big kind of misconception. It's like, oh, a movie stunt pilot, it's like low, fast, how hard can you pull? How close can you get?
Yeah.
And sometimes there's all these things we got to handle. Like, well, what about the backlight? What about getting the glints on the canopy? What about seeing this side of the actor's face as you're coming through a 45-degree bank right here? Like, there's a lot more. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. So there's two types of flying. Picture ship, camera ship flying. I love doing them both. I hate to give either up because they're so different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I think of, you know, whether you're doing the Blue Angels shoot or Top Gun or some of these other hundreds of movies you've been involved with, there's so many things to consider. There's both, you have two pieces of equipment that are moving very rapidly that need to be precise. You're trying to get shots. There's people on the ground. There's probably other, you know, factors, backgrounds, clouds, all these other things. How do you like tackle that coordination when you're going in? Like, is it just all briefing and hope you get lucky, or
you use your team?
Yeah.
And that took a little bit for me to learn too. You know, it's not just about me. We are more successful as a team than we are as an individual. I started a company 2 years ago called X-Brand, Advanced Aviation Cinematography. And part of this company are those individuals. We talked about those core values. All of my partners have those values. And we all have a little bit different jobs. I have aerial DPs, camera technicians.
Yeah.
We have, you know, people who do the booking and the insurance, the back end side of it. So when all those things you just mentioned, it's the team. You know, you go in and I have my certain thing that I'm going to do. The aerial DP is discussing with the DP the camera package, the lens, the lighting, the clouds, the background. What's the treatment? What's the look and feel? Is this energetic? Is it beautiful? Floaty? Is this dire? Like there's so many different things that go into it. It's not just me. I am a slice of the pie. And at the end of the job,
you're coordinating everything. That's in your job title.
It is. Yeah. There's coordinating, but once you bring that team in, you try to get to where it's a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
At the end of every job, I try to at least do a team dinner where, I buy the crew dinner and we have a drink together, and in that atmosphere, I'm sitting there with my friends.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting with these contractors that are like, all right, well, you're here and I'll see you in a couple months.
Yeah.
As we get older, it's hard to have friends, right?
Yeah.
We're so busy.
We're all so busy. Yeah.
My friends, people that I care about and work with, are my partners, my business partners. These are the people I'm in the trenches with when we're making movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better than having that kind of trust and relationship. We all just want to do the best we could do.
That's awesome. I mean, and you need that when you step into a project like Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
I mean, this is when you talk about aviation, it doesn't get any bigger than this. And I can't imagine that unless they do a Top Gun 3, they'll never shoot another movie like this with that much, the fighter jets and everything that went into that movie. I mean, you have to have that team to do something like that. So when you got the call to do Top Gun, and what was your initial reaction to that? Were you excited? Were you overwhelmed? You're like, oh shit.
I think I hung up the phone and yelled at the top of my lungs in my backyard on a Saturday morning, probably freaked out every neighbor within a mile radius. It's just, it was a Hail Mary. I've told people before, everyone's probably heard it. The Cinejet was kind of a dream of mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on paper, drew this L39 with a camera on the front of it.
So talk about that really quick, but not to go off topic of the Cinejet. I know the L39. It's a really fun airplane.
Yeah.
What did you do to that thing?
Well, the first trick was finding a partner, and that's Randy Howell, Patriot Jet team, incredible mission. Their 2 spare jets are my primary camera jets.
Oh.
And again, just talk about a good partner and a good friend.
Yeah.
Trusting me. Randy trusted me to modify 2 of his perfectly good L39s and put, lines, wires, cables, mounts all over these airplanes with no guarantee of work. Imagine that business plan. You go to someone like, hey, I'm going to mutilate your
airplanes. Sounds like an aviation business,
It
Kevin.
kind of does, right? So
I'm sure this will work, right?
Randy, we gotta have it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to get it, but we got a good chance.
But whatever it is, it's going to be really cool.
It's going to be awesome. Delta Airlines was my first customer.
Oh, cool.
They found out about the jet because I'd been working for Delta for a while through some other entities. And they said, hey, we want to try this for our A350 shoot, brand new A350.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, ooh, I think it's the wrong jet. This is a fighter jet. This is for canyons and dogfighting.
Yeah.
This is for fighter jet movies. And they're like, no, we think it's cool. We want to use it. Okay. So I kind of told my team, I'm like, this is great. We're going to get paid to go test the jet before we ever work on Maverick. So Delta, if you're listening, sorry, I'm glad it went well. But that was a full test for the L39.
Congratulations on the beautiful cinematography.
So anyway, I'm in my backyard. I get a call from a gentleman named Tommy Harper, who's the producer of Top Gun Maverick at the time. Didn't know it was called that. And he just said, hey, Kev, we're making this movie. And we know you've been building this jet. We know you've been doing other camera jet work. We'd really like you to come be the camera jet pilot for Top Gun Maverick. Not the aerial coordinators, camera jet pilot.
Yeah, got it.
And he's like, do you think you could be available during this time frame to come do that? And I was like, well, I think we should be good. Yeah, it should work out. He's like, awesome. We'd love to have you.
Nice.
And I hung up the phone and I was just like that moment of like, yeah, like, are you kidding me? That just happened. And then my role evolved from just the camera jet pilot to the aerial coordinator.
Yeah.
I think as I got really comfortable with all the other things I did, the helicopter flying and my relationship with the DOD and working with the Navy.
Yeah.
Expanded. Mission creep in the best way possible. That's
amazing. Like when you walked, the first time you stepped onto the set, you had to be, you walk in, you're a real pilot. You're the jet guy, right? And there's all these actors. You see all the actors are in the movie. Like they have to be like, oh my God, this is a jet guy. They got to be kind of honored to meet you. And it's got to be a weird relationship with them because you're the actual real deal and they're acting like this. How was that relationship with maybe not Tom He's a little bit of an outlier, but all the rest of them, right?
They were the real deal. Like we built this curriculum. I called it the Tom Cruise Flight Academy that I got to administer and took them through this program. They were the real deal. Like the actors literally had 50 or 60 or 70 hours of L-39, extra 300 and Cessna 172 time before they even got into the F-18.
Oh, nice.
And then, I mean, these guys are out there.
Were they actually flying during this training?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they're flying with CFIs. Okay. Some of them were logging time. Some of them used that time to convert into their real license.
Oh, no. That's awesome.
So to be honest, they were the real deals. Like the actors in this movie, they were doing the work. Yeah. They were pulling the G's. If you put me in the back of an F-18 and I got to look into a camera and can't see forward and I got to read lines, I don't get sick very often. I'm going to get sick.
Yeah.
These guys were like seasoned pros by the time they got in there. So I think, I don't think they ever looked at me and were like, oh, dude, Kev's the real deal, because we put them through the ringer. Like they were the real deal.
I bet you if they looked back, if they didn't know what was coming and the ring, what you were about to put them through, they would have been a little more intimidated.
Maybe so. One day we were doing, before Top Gun started, most people don't know this, we spent a considerable amount of time flying the L-39, chasing other L-39s, Randy's Patriot jets, just to see what we can do. New gimbal, new technology, new jet. Like these are things that hadn't been tested.
Yeah.
So new camera angles. So we were building this menu list of items that we could add into the new movie. Things we never had before. And there was one day that we came into the hangar. It was really hot, middle of the summer. And we would kill the engine on the L-39 and kind of coast into the hangar so to get ourselves in the shade. And we'd pin the ejection seats and we'd hop out.
Yeah.
And one day I killed the motor and I rolled into the front of the hangar. Crew chief chalked me, popped the canopy, and they were playing the theme song to Top Gun.
Oh, God.
And there was a moment there where I was like, oh my God, like, what are we doing? We're like flying and prepping for Top Gun.
Rad.
I had like instant goosebumps.
Really?
And those are those moments, right? Where you kind of have to step back and be like, okay, this is actually kind of cool.
Oh my God. When you're filming a movie at that level or any production, right? And you start having pressures, like how do you cope with that and manage all the perceived pressures, or maybe the reality of a schedule or a timeline or a shot list or something? Like, how do you, as an aviator, because you have, production side of it, a lot of pressure there. You have the aviation side of it, a lot of pressure there. How do you create that balance?
I'm still not a pro at it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just comes with experience. I mean, I've gotten a lot better at it. I think it's more just compartmentalizing, all these things that are kind of tearing at you, all these external stressors. I kind of learned to just literally put them in different compartments, and then you take the one that needs to come first. Usually that is a safety of flight, right? What's going to keep people alive? Okay, let's deal with this first. Yeah. Can I assign? Can I delegate? Do I have to fix it? Do I have to tell Tom Cruise or the director no? Right?
Did you have to do that?
Of course.
Really? What did they say?
Part of an aerial coordinator's job.
Yeah.
If they respect the aerial coordinator, they agree. And usually the right thing that I've learned to do is you don't just say no. You can say, no, we can't do this because this will happen. Yeah. However, we can go do it this way, and this might be even better.
Do you think like the Tom Cruise Aviator was more receptive to all that rather than Tom Cruise, the actor, producer? I mean, because he's a very accomplished aviator himself.
There's no difference. So Tom Cruise Aviator versus Tom Cruise briefing or planning, there's just Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
There's no difference. It was very fortunate to, we've done tons of briefing, hours of briefing on that movie.
Yeah.
He's very attentive. He's very involved from step one to the very last step. First in, last out type person. He's not rushing out. He's not too busy for it all. Yeah. He makes the time, does the work. Yeah. So it's the same person.
God, that's so cool. What an amazing experience. And I don't want to dwell too much on Top Gun. I know that's a very small part of your work. It's obviously, I think, one of the biggest things in aviation for a long time. Was it hard for you guys when they didn't release the movie right away?
Yes and no. I knew the mission.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we can release it now and it'll go into home theaters, or we can wait and let people properly see this movie.
Yeah. That was painful for me, by the way.
It was painful for everybody. It was really painful for us. Like, imagine like just waiting to share with the world all this stuff we couldn't share.
Because you had seen the movie, like, right?
We'd seen different directors' cuts, and they'd done a lot of modifying.
Yeah.
All the way up. By the time they
Really?
picture locked that thing, it was pretty late in the game. They had a lot of time to tweak.
Yeah.
But we kept seeing it, and then I think I saw it 3 or 4 times before the final.
You're just like, this
premiere.
is so good.
I
Had
mean,
to have been painful.
The premiere down in San Diego on the carrier, and watching it, that was a very special moment. The movie was in its very complete stage. I hadn't seen it that way.
Yeah.
So when I saw it in San Diego for the premiere, that was insane. It was really special.
Yeah. God. I mean, it was, I understood when they delayed the release, like, okay, fine. We're just gonna have to wait. I think I've seen it 4 times now.
That's it?
Yeah. I mean, I saw it twice in the theaters and I watched it.
It's unimpressive.
Twice. I know. I'm going to go home and watch it tonight.
Okay,
I'm going to
good.
make my kids. We have a theater in our backyard. When it's a nice weather, we set up the outdoor. So maybe we'll sit out and watch it tonight. When they, speaking of aircraft carriers, have you ever done the 24-hour tour where you get to live aboard and you get the full treatment?
No, I've flown around them. I've walked on them in the port of San Diego for briefings.
Yeah.
Never actually gone out on the carrier. That's
Really?
that's definitely a mission goal.
So you need to check. I'm gonna get a link for you. I'm gonna get a connection for you. People that employ military aviators, which I'm one of, you can get an invitation to go do a tour. And I got an invitation to do a 24 hours on the John C. Stennis.
Nice.
When it was doing, they were ramping up for maneuvers.
Workups.
They were doing a workup, and it's by far one of the coolest experiences of my life.
Yeah.
And we got, we flew in on the COD, landed on the aircraft carrier, took off in that airplane.
So you got catted.
We got catted.
I'm so jealous of you.
And it was violent.
Yeah.
Like it was violent.
Awesome.
And and you sit facing backwards, right? And there's no windows.
Yeah.
You're sitting at that thing and the launch off and they launch you. So it's this violent launch and all of a sudden there's no movement. I'm like, what just happened? And I'm a pilot. Like I'm used to feeling G-forces and you don't feel anything. And all of a sudden the pilot, you start feeling a little bit of load and you're saying like, okay, we're in the air now. But it was like going around and meeting all the people. We met all of the different groups, and from the guys that run the chain locker to the people that run the Starbucks to the.
It's a city.
It's a city, and it's just fascinating. But we got to be on the flight deck during the launch and recoveries, and it was just amazing.
I'm insanely jealous of you. I need to do that one day.
You got to do it. You would be like, it was the coolest thing, and we did it at night. Watching these guys do it at night.
Yeah, it's just insane.
And until you're standing right there, 10 feet away from where an F-18 is landing on an aircraft carrier and seeing and feeling it, the kind of vibration of it is a wild experience.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Oh man, I got to do that one day.
It's
I think most people don't understand the violence of like a cat shot. Like the aircraft that we fly, private jets, like if I got a cat shot on a Phenom, like the nose gear would go ripping 1,000 feet off the bow of the carrier, right? Like it just, it's so violent, and those aircraft are built for it. Like the Phenom wouldn't even move; it would just like launch the nose gear.
It's gone. It's sitting there.
It is insane what those aircraft go through. And even the what do you call it? The arresting gear. It's crazy.
That cables.
I flew the approach in the Phenom. It was like 11 times. I did it.
You did?
Well, yeah, that's how we got Mav's point of view. I was cleared down to 10 feet with a Phenom 300 on the USS Theodore Roosevelt. And I did it in clear skies, no wind, no pitching seas, not fully loaded, not at war. No one's trying to kill me. And it was challenging.
But just to be able to fly that approach over that, like how low over the deck did you fly?
10-foot restriction.
Oh my God.
I know. I was like, man, if I just screw one up and just squeak the tires on, do I like log that? Like the only civilian Phenom 300 touch and go or bolter.
You're like, sorry guys, my bad.
I totally, I like asked Embraer tech support. I'm like, you think the tires are okay for like a resting gear carrier? And they're like, wait, what? Like, never mind.
In Brazilian, they're like having a conversation in Portuguese. Like, what is this crazy American saying?
Never mind. I won't do it.
What was your favorite scene to shoot for Top Gun?
It's silly. People probably heard me talk about it, but I swear to God, like I had my music on in my helmet in the L-39. There's so much footage in Maverick of like I don't know, is it called ISR? The footage of like the bomb, the radar, or the screen, like the seeker, if you will. So when it's going into the, bombing the targets, all the practice targets, all of that footage shows a very good shot of like approaching something.
Yeah.
Well, we can't use footage from the DoD of real weapons.
Right.
And if you did, it would look horrible anyway. It's not that great for like feature film.
They don't use
So how are we going to get that? And I'm like, well, I could lock the camera off straight ahead on the L-39 and I could go be the bomb. Like, fly down at things. They're like, yes, that's great. Go do that. And I had like 4 or 5 days of just bombing targets with my airplane.
Oh my
Where
God.
I would and it was fun. I'd like invert, I'd pop, I'd come over the top and I would just aim down at something and get as low as I could.
Does that thing have like wing, like spoilers, or how do you slow it down?
With G pulling away from that big hard thing, the ground.
Just go really fast.
Jesus Christ. That was fun. Because normally you got a lot of responsibility or you're directing other aircraft. So to go out on a military range and just be cleared hot, burn all the gas you got and try to be the bomb or the missile.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Well, that brings up the question, like how much access did the military? I mean, the military had to be super involved in this movie, right? Like, like what type of access did you have? And
I feel like for the Government Accountability Office, I have to say that we didn't do anything the public didn't pay for. No, I'm just kidding. Which is kind of true. Like we couldn't take the Navy away from their full-time job. They have a full-time job. Every day they're doing something protecting us, or there's fully loaded on the front of a ship, or they're training.
Yeah.
So one thing we did very, very well is we figured out ways to utilize assets that weren't in use or training, but then we also had to pay for that.
Yeah.
So the movie paid a fortune for everything we did. It felt like if you had to turn the boat 10 degrees, we were going to pay for it.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of Navy support though, because we had DoD approval. And I think the Navy understood that this is a great film to showcase naval aviation. And just like it did in 1986, this would probably be the second single largest recruitment effort of the United States Navy.
100%.
And I think it's succeeded in that. And I mean, it's also for our men and women that are downrange and the folks that serve in the Navy, what a very cool way for their friends, their family, their counterparts to be like, that's what I do.
Yeah.
And for authenticity and realism, I can't tell you how many fighter pilots I've talked to who are like, it's pretty good. That's like almost exactly what we do.
I was going to ask you, because like I'm a pilot, like aviators are the most critical people on the planet, right? All of us. And I don't know of one pilot that said that movie wasn't the best thing I've ever seen. How does that, like as an aviator, you guys made this thing that aviators are like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. I think there was a giant push from Joe Kaczynski, our fearless leader, our director, who's an incredible director, for authenticity, for realism, but also crews really drove home. Like if there was something off when we came back from a mission, we were going to redo it.
Yeah.
So what a massive push. Whereas a lot of maybe production companies have a finite amount of money and they're like, hey, we're out of money. That's all you get, and we'll fix it in post.
Yeah.
Top Gun Maverick was not a fix it in post movie. It was fix it in like fix it while you're shooting it.
Just keep flying.
Practically.
Just keep flying.
Get it right.
Yeah.
Also minimal CG and as much practical flying as possible. Yeah. We lived it true to that. We always use this thing, we call it a cinematic license. That means that if we made it perfect, like exactly how it would be in the military, it'd be boring. Right? Because it's like sheer boredom followed by like moments of sheer terror.
Yep.
It's just like aviation.
Sure.
So we got to take a little creative license and let the audience be part of a thrill ride.
It's got to be fun.
And I think Joe did that pretty darn good.
I do too. I mean, I think that movie is a national treasure. I think that, it really is. I mean, it's at least if you're an aviator, it really is. And I think it's done wonders for bringing kids becoming interested in aviation. I think it's obviously a great recruiting tool for the military, and thanks for your involvement. It's really, really cool.
My pleasure.
On to a few other things I wanted to talk to you about. I know we're kind of getting long on time, but where do you on the drones versus aircraft? I wanted to kind of understand the equipment and where do you think things are going. And you've done both, right? You guys.
I have done both. Yeah. No, I flew RC growing up. So when flying cameras from RC or drones became a thing, I was like, well, I better get in on that too. So I did the drone thing very early on and did a lot of really cool movies and TV shows using drones. Yeah. It's why my company X Brand has a drone division right now. Mm-hmm. Here's what I tell people from a business standpoint. It's very simple. you have this section right here, what drones can do. You have a section over here, what helicopters can do. As technology gets better, there's an overlap. There's been an overlap, but that overlap keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
One day, maybe next generation, this generation, who knows, maybe drones will be able to do everything a helicopter can do. I don't know.
Yeah.
The technology is useful. It's needed. It can do things that helicopters can't do. One of the coolest things about my company is instead of just being a drone company where it's like, no, use a drone for that or vice versa. It's great doing both. So we can be like, you need a helicopter for that and you need a drone for this.
Yeah.
And that's great. There's a right tool for every job.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to push.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like the reason I asked that, there's such a growing community of kind of amateur filmmakers in the aviation space, especially, you know, with social media and people doing kind of crazy stuff. And you're on an end of a spectrum that is the top tier of professionalism, safety, budgets. That's a big part of what you guys do. I mean, to operate at your level is very expensive, you know?
It's true.
And the other end of the spectrum, putting GoPros on airplanes and flying drones, and it's really inexpensive. And it's given access to kind of a whole different community. You know, we've all seen some of these stunts played out on YouTube. And how do you address that kind of stuff? And
on Monday, I'm working for a director that started that way.
Yeah.
On a very high budget, DoD approved commercial.
Nice.
So what's the lesson that's learned from that?
Yeah.
There's, to me, those folks that are playing with, you know, prosumer, consumer grade products, GoPros, putting them on aircraft.
Yeah. What's
the difference between them doing that, immersing themselves in it, learning, making mistakes, than me when I was a kid learning, making mistakes? Yeah. These are our future directors. These are our future producers. These are our future aerial camera pilots and aerial DPs.
Yeah.
At first, I didn't know what to make of it. I was like, man, look at these, like, for lack of a better term, amateurs trying to do what we're doing. But you know what? I have partners in my company that's how those people started.
Yeah.
And I'm working for those people now. So I can't champion it enough. Take advantage of all of these tools. In fact, we asked this in the beginning. I love when young people ask me, how do I get involved with what you do?
Yeah.
Well, this day and age, there's so many things that are available that we can legally attach to an aircraft, or all these, editing tools to go make videos. And I'm seeing incredible stuff online. Immerse yourself. Take advantage of all these things that you could feasibly afford and build. Heck yeah. I'm sold.
Well, and it's, you know, like Chris, you know, our mutual friend, Chris Kunkel, he's shot some really beautiful videos. I don't know if you've seen, he's just amateur guys.
It's insane.
Out there. And they're gorgeous with the music, and they're landing in fields out in Santa Ynez, and just really well done. And that's what they're doing.
Although, Chris, I want to see some of the bad landings. You're always like greasing these landings on. They look really good. I want to see the bloopers. No, it is.
You're
true,
never going to see the bloopers.
No, it is really impressive what Chris has done and what hundreds of other people have been able to do. I have so many friends in the business that I'm kind of watching start putting out this content, and I'm just like, dude, like,
that's really fun.
Heck yeah. Like, my hat's off to you. I love that.
Yeah.
These are the people that I'm going to work with. This is our next generation. So to me,
cool.
Full send.
Awesome. I love it. That's, you know, and honestly, like watching I've known Chris for a long time, and I started watching these videos he's doing. I'm like, I want to go buy a Cessna 180 and put big Tundra tires on it and go fly around
real airplane
in the backcountry.
Yep.
You know, I've never, you know, my perspective in aviation has always been as a pro pilot. And I'm getting to this point in my life where I'm like, I want to go have some fun. You know, every job I've had, everything I've done has been as a pro pilot, flying for somebody paying me to do it. And I really miss that side of aviation in my younger career. So
I know what you're talking about. That's why I bought a super decathlon.
Yeah.
Well, just being, you know, we fly a lot of aircraft. We get paid to fly them, but we're so dialed, right? We're so like in it for work and the precision and the business and the safety. Getting to go grab an airplane and go do some stick and rudder or aerobatics or just mess up a bunch of touch and goes, go get a burger. That's real flying.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the love. That's why we started. That's what we were doing as kids, getting rides with people. So, you know, to anybody that does, I know so many professional pilots, airline pilots that have their little airplane, their weekend warrior.
If a kid wants to get involved in you know, aerial filming, Like, how do they start just kind of doing that? Just start making their own stuff or do they, I mean, I'm assuming a kid couldn't walk up and throw a resume onto your desk and you're going to hire them to do some job. Maybe,
well, you never know. I mean, it's probably very similar with Silver Air. There's a lot of people that start from the bottom and kind of work their way up. For us, I tell people to immerse themselves in it, to utilize all these new tools that are much more affordable these days, to be able to make videos, make content. We know how powerful the social media platforms are these days.
Yeah.
I'm kind of horrible at it. I get busy and I don't post much. And, I watch what other people are posting and I'm like, man, it's capturing. It's awesome. So yeah, just immerse yourself in it. I also tell them to take some direction. This helped me. People look at me and they go, oh, I want to be, a cinematographer or camera pilot. And I'm like, make sure you know which path, because they're very different. Right. Do you want to operate cameras or do you want to fly? Yeah. Most people are, oh, I want to fly. Great. So aviation should be your forefront.
Right.
And if you want to do what I did, then get every single aviation job you can ever get and build a ton of experience with exactly where you want to go later. And at the same time, immerse yourself in filmmaking. Understand, buy GoPros, mount GoPros, figure out backlighting, lighting, frame rates, lens sizes. All those things are going to help them. So if that's what they want to do, you just pick a goal, take all those steps, and remember, this happened to me too. It's not this way, right? It's like a zigzag, sometimes backward, shit, damn it, up here. And then it's never completely straightforward. Your path to success, you're going to have hardships and you need to.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
So
100%.
You can't be deterred by that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing your dad did from the very beginning. Get out, go do your own thing.
Yeah.
Have some hardships.
Yep.
I love it. I think it's amazing advice for any, father and son that are considering working together. Outside of the obvious, what are some of your favorite aviation movies?
Oh, outside of the obvious. I guess kind of giving some testament to some other movies, but
this is more of a personality question.
It is.
By the way. My favorite is Airplane by far.
Airplane? Airplane's awesome. Yeah, Airplane's
Roger.
One. I like, one of my old-time favorites is a movie called Always.
Always?
It's a firefighting movie.
Oh, interesting.
And there's A26s and PBYs.
Is there? Okay.
It's a little love story. And but man, that's such a cool aviation movie. If you haven't seen Always, check that out.
Okay. I really thought you were going to say Airplanes. So with
really?
Dusty Clophopper.
Yeah. I mean, that's iconic, right? I love seeing real practical film, like flying. And I kind of love, seeing some vintage aircraft, back in the day. Clay Lacey, one of my heroes, has done some really iconic stuff.
Have you tell me about your relationship with Clay?
Flight of the Intruder. I was really
Oh, Flight of the Intruder. Clay's like he's sort of an industry aviation hero, and everybody knows him. And tell me about your relationship with Clay.
So interestingly enough, I think I applied at Clay Lacey Aviation to be a charter pilot during my stepping stones, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Clay interviewed me, and Clay didn't hire me. I was pretty young, and I think, he knew I was kind of dabbling with the Wolf Air camera jet, which was his competitor. There was the Clay Lacey Learjet with Astrovision, and then there was the Wolf Air Vector Vision Lear. And I was doing some work with Wolf, and at the same time I was doing charter work. So Clay'd known me since I've been a little kid. He's known my dad. Didn't get that job, but just stayed friends with Clay.
Do you think your dad had something to do with that?
No, I don't actually. I think Clay was just like, I don't need this. I don't need a guy trying to do what I do here. Probably, right? He was a smart guy. Still is. So my relationship with Clay today, Clay flew the camera Learjet on the first movie, and I got to fly the camera jets on the new movie. And it's been really special. We invited Clay out, and he came to the premiere that was down here in Hollywood for Top Gun. Got him right in the front row, so he got to watch that.
Oh, cool.
And getting to hear him kind of talk to me about how I did some of the stuff I did, and I'd ask him questions. It's just been this really cool experience. I feel like, the way I felt with Goosebumps and just that really cool feeling of being on a Top Gun Maverick film set.
Yeah.
I feel like Clay had that probably on the first Top Gun. Therefore, no one really knew what that movie was going to end up being.
Yeah.
Clay, just to put it out there, and I think the world knows this, is a true living legend. He's an icon. I've never seen anybody get an aircraft quite like him and strap it on. Maybe Bob Hoover. But Clay just literally will strap on an aircraft and feel everything, hear every noise. And it's just an extension of his body. And I've learned a lot from him. I've gotten to fly with him a couple of times. But he is one of my role models.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I would love to have him on the show, man, and just capture his story. And he's such a fascinating guy with such a deep, deep history in our.
In we should call him right now.
Let's Clay. We're coming after you. There was actually a Clay Lacey sighting yesterday at Van Nuys Airport. So my team saw him.
Really?
At an event, yeah.
Nice.
So he's still out there.
Yeah.
Putting his face forward. So
yeah.
I appreciate that about him. Have you done any acting yourself?
Just very, very little.
Yeah.
You know, when we're in the helicopters or jets, when you're in the picture ships, sometimes you got to deliver lines or play a very small part.
Yeah.
I did play a little bit of a larger role in something. It was like a proof of concept film called Edge of Space with the X-15.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't fly anything. That was just purely just acting. And it was very unnatural for me. I don't think my gift to the world is acting.
You have the face for it. Come on, Kevin.
I don't know. I got the face for radio. But it, you know, it's fun for me because it's an industry I love and know. And I think I like learning a lot of different sides of filmmaking. It helps me do my job really good to understand what the other departments have to do.
Yeah.
Understand what the actors have to go through. So I think that's why I enjoy it, but it's not my passion.
All right. Well, Kevin, Mr. LaRosa, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And, you know, I'm sure aviators are going to be fascinated by your story, and you do it right. I really appreciate your humility. It comes across very authentic. I think, you know, you are what we aspire to be as aviators. Thank you for being an inspiration to our young aviators out there. I think your path is a unique one. You're a super cool guy doing a super cool job. And again, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks. I'm a lucky guy. And we have to give a shout out to the men and women that are downrange. I've worked on a lot of military movies and I've gotten to see a little insight. So thank you to the men and women downrange. Somewhere on the other side of the world, there's some pilots sitting alert 5 on the bow of a ship, fully loaded, ready to get in the way of anything. And a bigger shout out, as I learned, to the spouses. So to the families and the spouses that are waiting back home, hopefully for a phone call they never want to get. Thank you all for your service, and I greatly appreciate it.
Kevin, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it, bud.
Got it. Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Flight Club podcast. Please subscribe to the show, leave a comment below, and follow us on Instagram at Flight Club Pod. We'll see you next time.